Ever find yourself, in a conversation and someone brings up something that just sends you, like, down a total rabbit hole?
Oh, yeah, totally. Happens to me all the time.
Yeah.
What was the rabbit hole this time?
So it all started with this article I was reading, and it was talking about this whole concept of antinatalism.
Antinatalism. Okay, yeah, I've heard of it.
Yeah.
But to be honest, I don't think I could really explain what it is.
Right. Like, at first, I was like, okay, what is this? But then I started reading more and more, and let me tell you, it really gets you thinking.
About what? Like, what kind of stuff?
Well, basically, it's the idea that it's morally wrong to have children.
Whoa. That's a pretty intense concept.
I know, right? And we're going to really try to unpack it all today. We're actually using the Wikipedia article on antinatalism as, like, our roadmap for this whole deep dive. I mean, it's a lot to get into, so I'm kind of glad you're here with me for this one.
Well, I'm happy to be here. And honestly, I'm pretty curious to dive into this myself. So where do we even start with something like this?
One of the things that surprised me was that this whole antinatalism thing, it's not exactly a new idea.
Really? Like, how old are we talking?
We're talking ancient Greece old. Thinkers back then, philosophers like Epicurus, were already having these big debates about whether life, by its very nature, involves more suffering than pleasure.
Huh, that's interesting. So, like, the roots of this idea go way, way back.
Exactly. But it seems like it really started to take shape as a more defined concept. I don't know, a movement almost
Yeah.
later on, right?
Yeah, you could say that. In the 19th and 20th centuries, you start to see figures like Arthur Schopenhauer really bringing these ideas to the forefront. They were grappling with this idea of consent, or the lack thereof, when it comes to being born. Like, is it ethical to impose existence on someone who didn't ask to be born, especially when that existence might involve suffering?
Okay, see, that's what I mean about a rabbit hole. It's like suddenly you're thinking about all these huge questions.
Yeah, and that question about imposing existence on someone else, that's really the core ethical dilemma at the heart of antinatalism. And I think it's important to remember that within antinatalism itself, there are all these different viewpoints and reasons people hold this belief.
So it's not like there's one size fits all antinatalism.
Right, exactly. Some antinatalists, their focus is on the potential suffering of the individual child. But then you have others who take a much broader view, looking at the impact on society or the environment.
Okay, yeah, I can see that. Like, I've read arguments about overpopulation, how it puts a strain on resources and contributes to things like climate change.
Exactly. They argue that each additional human being has a measurable impact on the planet's resources, and they see that as a burden on future generations. It's not just about one person's life, it's about the collective impact on the world.
Right, that makes a lot of sense. But I gotta imagine that not everyone's just on board with this whole antinatalism thing, right? There have to be some counter arguments to all of this.
Oh, absolutely. And there's some pretty strong ones. I mean, one of the biggest ones is this idea of the human instinct to have children. It's like this biological drive, this way to pass on your genes, your legacy. A lot of people find meaning in that.
Totally. And besides, couldn't you argue that future generations might be the ones who actually solve these problems, like find solutions to climate change and resource depletion?
Exactly. Think about renewable energy, for example. We're making strides all the time. There's this hope that with technology and innovation, we can mitigate some of the environmental issues that antinatalists are concerned about.
That's a good point. It's like it's not necessarily all doom and gloom.
Right. But at the same time, the Wikipedia article brings up this thought experiment, and it's one that's always stuck with me. Imagine a child born with a debilitating illness. Even with all the medical advancements we have, it makes you question, was it ethical to bring that child into the world knowing they would face such significant challenges?
Wow. Yeah, I see what you mean. That really makes you think about the weight of these decisions.
Right. Because as much as having children is a deeply personal choice, it also has these massive societal and ethical implications. It makes you consider this balance between individual desires and our collective responsibility to, well, everyone now and in the future.
I have to say, this whole deep dive, it's really shifted my perspective on this. Like, I don't know if I'll ever look at family planning decisions the same way again.
That's what's so interesting about antinatalism, right? It might not give you easy answers, but it definitely makes you challenge your assumptions and really think critically about these big life choices.
It really does. And it just makes you wonder, if more people really grappled with these ideas, how would that change the world? How would it change our decisions? Not just about having kids, but about everything.
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it?